Hello, folks. We're back finally with another episode of Unfinished Business. I am Unfinished Business Television, actually. I am your host, Jeff Galashaw, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Andre Joseph of AJ Epics.
Hey, yo.
And this week, we will be getting into trailers, news, and reviews. So, get ready. We have a lot to talk about, so we're going to just start off. We're going to start off with talking about trailers because quite a few came out recently. First up, we have the long-awaited trailer for Avatar: The Way of Water, the sequel to James Cameron's Avatar movie, in which he has decided to make many sequels to. This one picks up, I guess pretty much where the story last left off, or a few years in the future. And, it's mostly CGI animation mixed in with live action. And watching the trailer, I don't know. I felt myself a little underwhelmed. I wasn't really looking forward to it because Avatar, it's a fine movie on its own, but it was nothing I ever felt really needed a sequel or more story from. So, now we have, The Way of Water, where I guess the main two characters have children now and they're fighting a war still against others. And like I said, it just looks like a big animated film and not a very impressive one. At least that's my view. I saw Avatar in theaters. This time I might skip and just, if it is of interest, I will wait for whatever streaming service it comes on. Andre, how did you feel about it?
So I saw the trailer when Doctor Strange came out, and I was with my friend, and neither one of us was impressed with what we saw. Now, granted, we saw this in we saw it in the Dolby Theater here in Staten Island. And so we didn't get the full immersive feel of IMAX and 48 frames per second and, the 3D effects. But I'm just like, okay, from people I see online, they think this looks stunning. It looks amazing. And, they think it's going to make a lot of money because, being that we've been stuck at home for so long with this pandemic, that they want to go out and live in the world of Pandora once again on the big screen. But for me personally, I don't see anything innovative about this. The original movie, it was groundbreaking for its time. It changed how you could create these 3D worlds, motion capture that look photorealistic, and it's James Cameron, who seems to do no wrong at all. But here, I'm like, what are we supposed to gain from this, that this requires 3 to 5 more movies to continue its story? I see no reason to continue beyond that first film. And if you go to conventions, do you see people dressed up like the little blue aliens from Avatar? Not really. So, it's probably going to make $1 billion because, the Chinese and everybody love it overseas. But I really don't care. I'm like you. I'm going to probably skip this one and wait until it's on Disney Plus.
Do you think maybe that was the plan, is to underwhelm? Because, we sometimes have counted James Cameron out before, and then sometimes he's gone on to shock us.
Yeah, but this is just looking like more of the same. I was really expecting, for the time he put into getting this second movie made, that it was going to probably look even more realistic, or maybe we could feel like we're in the water, or smell the trees or something, let's take it the next step. And I just feel like this is more of the same shit. And everybody else with Marvel and Star Wars and all the other big properties are pretty much taking that tech and applying it to their movies, and they're making the money. I don't know if they want to go back to Avatar that easily.
I tell you, it just seems like James Cameron took one scuba diving trip and it changed his whole outlook in life, because it seems like that is what all his material revolves around these days. Okay. Next, we have, on a totally, I'm not going to say lower scale, but maybe budget-wise, we have Weird, the Al Yankovic story starring Daniel Radcliffe. Now, it's just a teaser, so, we don't really know too much about it. And, it did throw me off when I see a Roku original, it's like, but it does leave a lot of questions because you have Weird Al Yankovic, who, has been a public figure for decades, music artist, and we don't really know too much about his personal life. And no offense, from the look of the film, it doesn't look like we're going to get a traditional story of his life. It looks like UHF almost, because it looks more like a wacky action comedy, So I will admit, I'm intrigued to see just how this will all come together. And especially with Daniel Radcliffe, who, if I was casting Weird Al Yankovic, he's not the first name that would come to mind. How do you feel about this teaser?
So I know, I watched Behind the Music a long time ago, and they did an episode on Weird Al. And the thing is, I have no problem with Daniel Radcliffe in the part. He does seem a little bit brooding for Weird Al, which was kind of throwing me off about the trailer. But otherwise, okay, he was influential. He was fun back in the day. He's still fun now. But there's nothing really controversial about him that's worth a biopic. The worst things that I know ever happened to him was when Coolio sued him for Amish Paradise, and when sadly, he lost his parents in a fire. But other than that, I mean, people love Weird Al, and he's never drank. He's never done drugs. He's not somebody that gets into trouble. I mean, what? Did he get depressed when UHF bombed? I mean, there's nothing. I don't know where the drama is going to be in this movie, unless it's going to be a parody of music biopics. Then okay, maybe that might be more fun.
See, I didn't even think about that. Yeah. Maybe it will be, and unless it's unofficially a UHF sequel that never got made that he's using as a biofilm, which could be interesting. Okay, next up, the next trailer. Well, I mean, they're all pretty big budget, so that was the smallest one. So let's go with another big one that everybody has been anticipating, Thor: Love and Thunder. We already had the first trailer, but now we got, the colossal size true trailer with even more footage. Andre, I'll let you give your opinion first on this one, and then I will follow up.
Well, I know, with the first trailer, I had a pretty good vibe from it with Sweet Child of Mine as the music they played. That shot of him running through the woods, and you see his evolution. And at one point, you see him in the classic Thor costume for the comics. So that really got me into it. It definitely feels like Taika Waititi is doubling down on the comedy this go around, which it could actually be not terrible, because I liked Thor Ragnarok. I had a lot of fun with it. And I think that, they really want Chris Hemsworth to really expand himself as Thor, running around with the Guardians of the Galaxy, him trying to find his inner peace. Now you got Lady Thor with Natalie Portman, which of course is now angering people who don't like wokeness in this Twitter sphere. But I don't mind it. I mean, they took it from the comic books, and it's not like he's going away. And then they have the little bit with him getting stripped naked by Zeus, played by Russell Crowe. And, now everybody's like, oh, is he going to be butt naked in a Marvel movie? We don't know if that's going to be censored or not. And I really don't care. I mean, that's the girls' thing. Otherwise, I mean, I'm going to go see it. And Christian Bale looks pretty damn badass as Gore the God Butcher. So, I mean, I think he will be the one worth watching for this one. And he may be one of the best villains on screen in the Marvel Universe.
Okay, I'm with you as far as the excitement level for seeing this movie, because I will admit, first trailer was okay, but this was okay, this is colossal. This is great. I want to see this movie. But I will say I enjoyed the Russell Crowe, cameo or role, because I totally didn't expect him to be in a movie. I don't know. I kind of differ on you with Christian Bale. I'm not saying he's going to be bad, but it kind of reminds me of in the first, I think it was the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, the villain. I'm getting
Tony the Accuser.
Yeah, I'm getting those kind of vibes, at least in look. You know, the performance, you know, might be stellar, but you know, as soon as I heard the voice, I knew it was Christian Bale. But you know, I'm staying, you know, I'm staying hopeful for this movie because I really would like to see it, and I really do hope it's good. And like you said, since it's doubling down on the comedy, you know, we don't have as much, I guess, the first two films like melodrama, you know.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure there's going to somehow be a way to have a Loki cameo in this. And
Yeah, maybe a post-credit scene. I don't think they want to totally take him out of the TV show yet with the way that ended.
okay, so like I said, I don't know anybody online who's really like, oh man, this is gonna suck. So I think it's in good hands. Next we have the She-Hulk the series trailer, which I know is not going into the movies, but you know, still part of the Marvel universe, kind of a big deal. It looks okay. You know, I don't really have too much to say about it. I'm like, it looks interesting. They did the thing where they don't try to not make her look too muscular, you know. So, but I mean, we'll see. I have faith in it. It makes I want to see this more than maybe some other Marvel shows in the past. So, I'm down for it.
Yeah, I was mixed because I do have an admiration for the She-Hulk character. She was part of the Avengers, and so of course I grew up with her in that team and pretty much with the whole Marvel universe, like all the cards I used to collect. So, you know, I have no problem with a She-Hulk TV show. I'm actually excited to see it get more tied in with the Incredible Hulk movie, like bringing back Tim Roth as Abomination, and you know, maybe we'll get an explanation with how Smart Hulk turns back into Bruce Banner, because they didn't explain that at the end of Shang-Chi. Spoiler alert. But on the other side of it, now I don't mind the comedy because that was the tone of the comic book. It was supposed to be kind of tongue-in-cheek. The CGI, though, is very troublesome, and it looked very wonky in a lot of scenes. Now, apparently, there's a new trailer that they put out where they actually improved it. So clearly, I mean, this doesn't come out till August. They probably have a little bit of time to fix it up. But it does worry me a little bit that CG doesn't look that great. But I still look forward to it because I do think Daredevil's going to show up. I think we're going to get a couple of other surprise cameos in there, and hopefully it'll tie into some other bigger things that are going to happen down the line in the MCU.
Well, we shall see. Hopefully, Rosario Dawson's character doesn't show up and sleep with her too. That seems to be an ongoing theme when she guest stars on Marvel shows. Next, a little bit of a different, but still special effects heavy. We have George Miller's follow-up to his Mad Max movie, 3,000 Years of Longing, starring box office champ Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba as a genie that she discovers. And apparently in this movie, according to the trailer, she finds the genie and she's afraid to make wishes because she knows usually what happens when people make wishes. Somehow they'll go wrong. And so the genie begins to tell her stories of, I guess, past owners or owners of the lamp and what their wishes were and what they went through. And also, it seems that there's a little bit of melodrama with him, you know, wanting to be freed. So it's an interesting premise, you know. It looks very beautiful, but it's also a movie that I'm afraid, while it looks beautiful, like you were talking about with She-Hulk, I'm afraid it might rely on special effects a little too much. You know, I mean, I think overall what George Miller seems to be going for is more of a magical realism story with obviously like fantasy and morals and lessons to be learned with, I'm guessing, a hint of romance, and I'm willing to check it out. I don't know how, like 100% if I'm like, okay, opening weekend, I need to see this. But if it's gotten good word of mouth, I'm willing to take a chance on it. How do you feel about it?
I'm with you on that. I would say if the reviews are pretty solid, then I'll go check it out. It feels like it's out of his wheelhouse though, because I'm used to Mad Max, and I know he's done like the fantasy stuff with the Babe movies and Happy Feet. So, it's not totally out of realm, but I watched this and I don't feel like it's a George Miller movie. This feels more like Terry Gilliam, if you ask me. Just the subversiveness, how weird the shots look. Idris Elba with the elf, the genie elf ears that he has. This feels like this should have been a Terry Gilliam movie. And he must have passed it off to George Miller, like, here, I'm too busy. You go ahead and you go make this movie. That said, I mean, I was still curious and I would check it out. And it looks like it could be a lot of fun, but weird. But I feel like it should be a different director. That's just my opinion.
Well, it seems like a very bohemian movie. But maybe this is him trying to show that those artistic flourishes in Fury Road weren't, just that. Like he can do a somewhat, more, I guess, happier and conventional story than just wall-to-wall action, maybe he's trying to prove something, or maybe the script spoke to him. Who knows? And next, our final two trailers we're going to talk about are both action-packed. I'll stick with the bigger one, with Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, or the Tom Cruise action summer extravaganza. I know people have been wowed by this trailer, but I'm like, okay, it looks like a good action film, but I'm not like, okay, I can't remember the title of the last movie,
Fallout.
But that one impressed me with the trailer where, with the plane and the hanging on and then the helicopter and Henry Cavill cocking his arm like a weapon, that was impressive. This movie looks like this should have been an earlier Mission Impossible movie. The only thing of real, wowness is Henry Kazerny from the first film is back. And obviously, this is part one of what is going to probably be the final Mission Impossible movie. So instead of just facing a villain, it's like, I've got to take down a whole ideology. So it's just like, really? I mean, look, I'm going to go see it either way, but I'm just like, you're shooting for the stars, literally, since the next film might take place in space. So I'm just like, okay, we get it, Tom Cruise. You wanted your James Bond thing, so you got it. But like I said, I'm going to see it. I'm just not in awe by the trailer. I'm hoping maybe by the time, it gets closer to premiering, there'll be more scenes and maybe more awe-inspiring footage. How do you feel about it?
Again, very mixed, because I liked Fallout a lot. I didn't like the movie that came before it, Rogue Nation. I feel like that was where the franchise was starting to get a little fatigued. Now, it does feel like it's more of the same shit. With Ethan Hunt gets framed, he's running, he has the big stunt this time where he leaps off a mountain with a motorcycle and leaps off like Pierce Brosnan in GoldenEye. And, it's just the same old spectacle of him having to save the world. There's really nothing new or profoundly deep about these movies other than Tom Cruise trying to show off that he still got it. But I gotta say, he's starting to show his age. And I saw that in Fallout, but now you're really beginning to see it. I don't know if it's the stress of, shooting during COVID and yelling at crew members for not wearing masks and doing all that. But, it's just one of those things where you could really start to feel like, okay, people are going to go see it because it's Mission Impossible, it's Tom Cruise, and he's still got the longevity. But my God, this is starting to feel like it's just tainted and old, and he's older than Roger Moore's last outing as James Bond. That's pretty much where we're at. The guy's going to be 60 this year. On the plus side, though, Issei Morales playing the big villain, after all these years playing mostly supporting parts and, doing a lot of TV work, he gets a big time action role. This is probably the first major film he's done since Bad Boys with Sean Penn, where he plays the main bad guy. This is full circle for him.
I'm sure he's had somewhat major roles since then. Jeez. Hey, he was in La Bamba.
Yeah, but Lou Diamond Phillips got the push, not him. He just ended up becoming a Trump supporter.
Less about that.
Yeah, the less about that, the better. I like him, though.
You know, I would have liked, or maybe they're saving this, I guess maybe call it the Karate Kid syndrome. I would have liked them to bring back like maybe some past agents who are still living, you know, sort of like a reunion, even if it's a cameo, you know, to help them since this mission is so big, you know, and I want them to bring back maybe the teamwork aspect, you know, rather than, oh, Tom Cruise just does it all and you guys are technical support.
Well, that's why I think they need to, at some point, reboot from scratch. If Tom Cruise lets go of the franchise, it needs to. I mean, not that I watched the TV show at all. I mean, I watched maybe a little bit of the '80s one, but they need to go back to that. They need to go back to like everybody had a specialty. There's the guy who does disguises, the guy who's got the muscle, the black dude who's just like super smart, and you have Mr. Phelps, and you have the hot chick. Let's go back to that stuff, because right now it's Tom Cruise and everybody else.
We shall see. We shall see. Either way, we know it's going to be a box office bonanza.
Yeah, it's gonna make $1 billion maybe, or close to that.
We shall see, even though it's only part one. And for our final trailer, we have The Gray Man, the $200 million Netflix movie, directed by the Russo brothers, starring Ryan Gosling, Anna de Armas, and everybody's favorite, Chris Evans as the villain. Andre, you've seen the trailer. What did you think?
It looks entertaining. It looks like almost like it could be in the same universe as Extraction, which the Russo brothers produced. And also, it's the same writers as the Captain America movies and Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. So you could clearly see from the trailer that they're trying to go for that Winter Soldier, Civil War type of style with the action and the blend with the humor. And like Chris Evans is not being like a super bad guy, but somebody who's very snarky and has his quips. And Ryan Gosling is just, your typical square-jawed hero on the run. I'm going to give it a shot. I don't know if it's going to be good, but it looks entertaining.
Well, considering the last movie the Russos made was Cherry, which stylishly was great, but
Tom Holland was good. It was kind of dull.
This obviously, maybe they're going for the opposite, like nothing can be dull about this movie. But I'm getting, even though they spent $200 million on this, I worry because I'm getting those Ryan Gosling, The Rock movie vibes, where it's basically something high concept, could have been made in the 80s. And like you said, it's entertaining for what it is, but, like a few weeks later, you're not going to remember much about it. You're going to be like, oh yeah, that action movie with Ryan Gosling. You're not going to be like, wow, yeah, that was movie of the year, And, I'm a little afraid. I know Chris Evans tries to play different types of roles, but I'm afraid he's going to get typecast as these snarky villains, just like he was in Knives Out. Is this going to be his Ryan Reynolds quip, when it comes to acting role? Because, they're already planning a prequel movie starring him, So that's why I'm like, oh no, is this going to be the Deadpool of the Gray Man universe before we even say if this is going to be that successful?
Yeah, well, Netflix has a lot to concern themselves with the gambles that they've been making as of late and losing so many subscribers. And it's all because of the fact that a lot of their movies are just very subpar. And you get some diamonds in the rough, but a lot of them that I've seen, they haven't been all that impressive.
Yes, because it was like they started off like, okay, we're gonna give you guys Roma, that won a bunch of Academy Awards, and then it was just like, okay, we just need big. I feel like it's the same thing of any studio starting out. Let's give the biggest names that these contracts, and they'll make their films with us. But then we try to find, instead of finding original scripts, it seems like they're just like, hey, what will almost appeal to almost every audience, and then we'll make this instead. There's no risk taking, it seems. or if there is, it's on much smaller budgeted projects that are minuscule that probably didn't even start out as originals from them, but they bought up. So, okay, so that ends the trailer portion of the show, and now we move into movie news. So we already talked about the Gray Man prequel. This one isn't that big a news story, but it's interesting to me. Francis Ford Coppola's Megapolis project is moving forward with a cast. We have Adam Driver playing the lead or bigger role after Oscar Isaac supposedly turned it down. And we have the beautiful Natalie Emmanuel, Forrest Whitaker, and Lawrence Fishburne. So far, that is all the cast that we know of. I'm wondering if this is going to be like Oppenheimer, whereas weeks go on, it's like another new big name added to the cast, since this is supposed to be this huge project, really an epic, futuristic sci-fi epic from Francis Ford Coppola. But I will admit, I think even though this seems to be like his dream project he's always wanted to make, I would feel a lot more comfortable if this was, artistic early 1980s, late 70s Francis Ford Coppola versus Coppola, older age. I love that he wants to make experimental movies, but, it's been a while since you can honestly say, oh, that latest Francis Ford Coppola movie was so excellent, it blew my mind.
Yeah, well, obviously this being a dream project, he had a hard time getting off the ground because of all the financial issues that Zoetrope Studios always had. So I guess this is likely his last hurrah as a filmmaker in terms of like doing something of this scope. So you're going to get all the big guns of today and, whoever's still around, it's considered a legend, to come and be part of this. And Adam Driver is probably the standout in this case because he's working with everybody. He's working with Spielberg and JJ and Spike Lee and Ridley Scott. He's the go-to guy and doing a damn good job at it.
Yeah. Here, he's usually acclaimed in whatever film he's in, or if he's not acclaimed, at least the film is. So I'm having faith in it, even though it, little worries me that Oscar Isaac turned it down, and for what reason? Supposedly, again, we don't know officially if that's true. And speaking of old timers making a comeback, we have Rob Reiner, who has decided after all these years to make This Is Spinal Tap 2, and also an Albert Brooks documentary. Is it, okay, this is probably going to get me booed and hated. I have never seen This Is Spinal Tap from beginning to end in one sitting. So, I know it's a comedy classic, but I have never completed it. So that is, I understand how exciting this is for some people, but for me, it was like, it's something like I feel like they should have, if you were going to make a sequel, the time was right, like when they were guest starring on The Simpsons and came out with a new album. That would have been the time. Now I just feel like if they make it now, it's going to feel like, I don't know, A Mighty Wind or one of those Christopher Guest movies, more than a true sequel. And, I'm more excited for the Albert Brooks documentary, but that could easily go the way of like the Judd Apatow, Gary Shandling documentary. That could be something you could easily put on streaming, or like the George Carlin, just make multiple parts and put it on cable. I would like to see an Albert Brooks documentary because I find him very interesting. So unfortunately, out of the two projects, that's the one that's more interesting to me. How do you feel about Rob Reiner coming out of, I guess, semi-retirement? And
I'm with you 100%. And I have a confession too. I had never seen This Is Spinal Tap. I almost saw it last year, and then I kind of got into a little dramatic thing I won't get into. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those movies, and I know it's a big cult classic. It launched a lot of careers. It launched Rob Reiner's career as a director. I like Michael McKean. I like Christopher Guest and Harry Shearer. But who is this movie for? Because it feels like it's going to be mostly for an older crowd that remembers that film as this, all-time classic. The younger audience isn't going to really get it. And I just feel like this shouldn't even be a theatrical release. This should go on a streaming platform where it's a lot less riskier to make. And when it comes to Rob Reiner, who I do find an inspiration, and I like reading his tweets all the time, that's just me. But I feel like he just hasn't done a good movie in God knows how long. I mean, I like The American President, I like Misery, you know, When Harry Met Sally, Few Good Men. The guy has made classics, but it seems like he's just been missing the mark for quite a while. Like the one he did about the Iraqi war, and just I think he can find better material. That's just me. I am like, why go back to the old stuff and try to ruin the memories for these people?
Well, I liked a more recent film he did. I don't remember the name of it, but it was two kids falling in love, and I guess it kind of was like a When Harry Met Sally, where we hear about her side of the story and his side of the story.
Yeah.
It was cute. You know, it wasn't horrible, but you know, obviously it wasn't tearing up the box office. But you know, that was probably the last decent film. I know. I mean, I don't know why he made Alex and Emma. You know. So, you know, it's nice to have him back. But again, fingers crossed, please, you know, be the Rob Reiner who was making those classics back to back, you know, not, you know, Alex and Emma, the story of us, you know, that or North.
Yeah, the least said about North, the better.
It wasn't that horrible. I saw what he was trying. Next, we have, there will be a Godzilla versus Kong 2. Adam Wingard is directing, and he has cast Dan Stevens in the movie, so it'll be the guest reunion. You know, I was fine with the first movie. I don't know why we needed a sequel, but wasn't settled. You know, obviously box office. You know, they want money, so I'm happy for the reunion. Wish it was in a more original project, but how do you feel about it?
Pretty much the same. It's just I'm happy to see Dan Stevens working with his guest director once more, and it'd be kind of funny if he played the same character, but you know, it's not happening. No, it's going to be more of the same. A lot of destruction, a lot of fighting. They'll probably throw in more of the King of the Monster characters into the mix to make it more interesting, since they want to do a big universe with that. It is what it is. There's really not much to say.
Okay. Next, we're going to talk about two sequels here, since we're on sequels. The Darkman 2 sequel talks have opened, and Liam Neeson seems willing to do it. Of course, he wants to see a script first, which is ironic because I'm like, Liam Neeson, did you see the scripts for half the movies you've been making recently? So I'm like, you seem to take what you can get. So what? Your one movie that is more of a cult classic than, you know, box office classic, and now you're like, I need to see a script. You know, like playing hardball. Look, I'm not gonna lie, I don't love Darkman as much as everybody else does. So, I mean, I tell you the truth, I like the straight-to-home video sequels more than I like the original Darkman. It's of interest, you know. This is another movie where I'd have to see, you know, footage first before I can say, okay, I'm sold. You know, because like, okay, a hero who can, you know, just disguise himself as others. It is like for 90 minutes or 3 hours at a time. You know, I'm just like, and he has super strength. You know, I'm like, okay. You know, and we don't have Larry Drake with us anymore, so his true nemesis is not around. You know, so I'm happy they, you know, it gets the fans what they wanted to see, an official Darkman sequel. But no offense to, you know, the original Darkman creator, I just say go watch the straight to home video sequels. They're more entertaining. But that's my personal view. How do you feel about this?
Well, I liked Darkman when it came out, and I was actually excited when Sam Raimi got the Spider-Man job. I was, oh yeah, they got the Darkman director. And I liked the sequels as well, the ones that went straight to video with Arnold Vosloo. They weren't bad. The third one in particular was pretty damn violent, with Jeff Fahey as the villain.
Oh yes, my favorite.
Um, so if they do this now, he doesn't have to do the prosthetics as much. They could probably just put dots on his face and just CG him in, which almost kind of takes away the mystique of what made Darkman so successful, was just that ability to make the latex masks and disguise himself as the villains. And I wouldn't mind Liam Neeson doing it. It was a popular character. I don't think Sam Raimi's going to direct. I think he's going to just produce, and they'll find some other guy who's probably younger and more eager to bring it to life if they were to go out and make this movie. But I feel like at this point, and you may agree with me, Jeff, that Liam Neeson needs another trajectory in his career where he just gets away from the action movies. He's done it for too long. Now it's become a joke. I think he needs to take Seth MacFarlane's advice, and he should do that Naked Gun reboot. He doesn't have to be Frank Drebin. He could just be like a completely different cop character, and you just start making fun of all the stuff that you used to do, because he's conquered drama, he's conquered action, but now he's Charles Bronson. His movies come out one week and then they're gone on video the next. Do comedy. I know you did the Western thing with Seth, and you did Love Actually, but the guy can be comedic if he really wants to. If you ever saw that Life's Too Short episode, where he's doing the improvisational comedy with Warwick Davis, he was fucking funny in that bit. So let's see Liam Neeson do some comedy now. Improvisational comedy. No more of the Charles Bronson, Clint Eastwood type of action movies. They're played out, they're boring, and it's just more of the same shit.
It'd be an interesting take. I'm willing to stand behind that. Hopefully it works out. If not, I'd be like, maybe this wasn't the greatest idea. If all of a sudden he starts starring in spoof movies, it's like, I don't know. He's just a man who tries so many suits on that he's kind of tapped himself out at this point. Maybe if he had been in more of these films as a supporting character instead of the main character, it would be a different thing. But, since he's always pretty much the lead, it's just like, oh, Liam Neeson again, huh? But like you said, I like your theory. But like I said, the sequel of the Darkman, we'll see. It'll probably go to Fede Alvarez, who made those the Evil Dead remake. Next, then we have Dirty Dancing 2, the sequel they waited until, unfortunately, Patrick Swayze passed to make. So instead, we get to find out what's up with Baby, and it's going to have 90s hip hop. And as soon as I heard that, why did my mind go straight to that movie Honey, starring Jessica Alba? What are your feelings on this Dirty Dancing sequel? And
so I have a slight nostalgic connection to it because of the soundtrack. I didn't see the movie until I was much older, but I don't see the point in doing an older Jennifer Grey with her kids, and I guess the same shit's gonna happen all over again, but it's the 90s now. Dirty Dancing worked because it was set at that point before the JFK assassination and the British invasion. It was like it was still an innocent time, and yet you had all this stuff going on in the Catskills with the abortion angle and the whole deal with Patrick Swayze like sleeping around and he doesn't feel good about himself. Like women loved that stuff back in the day, and it had a really nice soundtrack, and She's Like the Wind, all that stuff. Are we also just neglecting Havana Nights? We're just saying that shit never happened. This is a straight sequel to that movie with a whole new team, but it's still Jennifer Grey, and we're going to try to recapture the magic. Nobody's going to give a shit about this movie. The second you said it was in the 90s, I said this movie is dead in the water. You just watch. Nobody wants to see that shit or go back to the 90s like that.
Well, it could go the way of He's All That, the unofficial remake sequel to She's All That. But, I mean, it could also be, how do I put this? Dirty Dance. okay, Dirty Dancing 2 Havana Nights. Patrick Swayze only had a cameo in it. So
yeah, one scene.
Yeah. So it's not really canon. It's not like, well, what happened to whoever and whoever from that movie? You know, if they decide to throw it in, great for fans of that movie. But I just think Havana Nights is like a spin-off offshoot that didn't work, that they don't want to really acknowledge, or that was the last time Johnny was seen. You know, so
he broke his back.
What?
He broke his back, and after he was lifting Jennifer Grey up in the air, and he was never the same.
Exactly. So he went to Havana in exile, and then, he disappeared. And then at the beginning of this movie, they find him, and Jennifer Grey has to deal with the loss of.
He was killed by Castro's men.
And now she finds romance with a Middle Eastern. A Middle Eastern substitute teacher who takes dance classes in the evening to be more social with people his own age. And
why does this have to get made now?
Because this is sequel time. Hello, have you not seen all the sequels we just went over news for?
Look, just because Cobra Kai worked doesn't mean it works for every old 80s property.
Hey, if Adrian Lin can make another movie, Jennifer Grey can come back.
Well, no, Jennifer Beal still looks good. They could do a Flashdance 2 today.
Why? If Flashdance was in the first place. So it's like, why would you come back with that one? I'm like, I hate to say it, in that argument, Dirty Dancing 2 makes more sense than Flashdance 2. But anyway, the next story is Rita Moreno is riding that comeback wave because she's going to play Vin Diesel's grandmother in Fast X. Yes, this is happening. Under the new director Louis Leterrier, who directed The Incredible Hulk and The Transporter Part 2.
And replace Justin Lin because Vin Diesel's an idiot.
Supposedly or allegedly. Okay. I'm like, this is sort of becoming like, again, Oppenheimer, where it's just like, okay, new day, new cast member. Okay.
Yeah, let's just get all of the distinguished actors of Europe to come and be in this movie, because it's what's going to make the Fast and Furious so legit. And I'm going to do it one better than Rita Moreno. I believe it is time for Gene Hackman to come out of retirement and play the grandfather of Vin Diesel, or even Paul Walker's character. You know, he's no longer with us. He can even be the grandfather of Brian O'Connor, so we can get a homage to the French Connection car chase. If that happens, that movie is going to make $2 billion at the box office, guaranteed.
Yeah, because at first I was going to say, how is Gene Hackman playing Paul Walker's role? What, he aged prematurely? Too much sun?
They can age him. He's not that old. I mean, he's 92, but they can make it look like he was in 1971.
Gene Hackman is in this movie. The only reason I could see it is because he wants a better last film on his resume than Welcome to Mooseport. Yeah. That's the only reason I could see him. And he wouldn't get along with Vin Diesel either. So,
while we're at it, let's bring in Michael Caine. He could be the wife of Helen Mirren.
Well, I mean,
you get an Italian Job tie-in.
Well, we haven't seen Michael Caine in quite some time, and only a few years ago he was like practically in everything.
Morgan Freeman could be the father of Tyrese.
Morgan Freeman just shows up half the time these days.
He'll do anything. He's got tax issues, man. He's got to pay bills and alimony.
Well, if a Morgan, hey, why not make him the villain? Last time he was really active was in those Now You See Me movies.
Well, they talked about Denzel playing a villain at one point. Maybe Morgan Freeman could fulfill that.
No, Denzel, no. Stick to your Equalizer 3. Stop it. What? He's gonna be like, oh, you think you got the fastest cars? You ain't seen mine.
Let's do a prequel set at the beginning of the Adventure of the Car, and let's get Maggie Smith to star. And the cast is Downton Abbey.
Hey, I say let's just sink it. Put Mark Wahlberg in it as the villain, since he's retiring anyway. Go out with a bang, you know.
The half brother of John Cena.
Well, why not? Everybody's in this damn family.
Everybody's in it. Every fucking actor in Hollywood. Brie Larson even took it. You know, of all people. Let's get all the Oscar winners in there. Will Smith, let's get him for number 11. He'll save his career.
I don't know if it'll save his career. It'll just make him a lot of money. I'm like, hey, why not? Michael B. Jordan. He likes, you know, resurrecting sequels. So
it just sells itself.
Yeah, because they literally do want to build their own kind of Marvel universe right over there. Even though 11, odd number to end on, is supposedly the last of, I guess, the Fast movies.
So they say.
Until Vin Diesel, again, might have tax problems himself.
Fuck it, get David Hasselhoff. He'll take anything. And he can ride a fucking car again.
He's too desperate. I'm like, I can't talk. I haven't seen half of these movies of
we could go
the Fast series. And unfortunately, we lost two people recently this week. We lost the composer Vangelis earlier this week. Do you want to say anything other than rest in peace about Vangelis?
Yeah, no, the Chariots of Fire theme song is just so iconic. And of course, Blade Runner, oh my God, is just heaven every time I hear it. It's just a huge loss. And I was really hoping he was going to come back for the sequel, but I was kind of glad they expanded on his themes on that film. But a loss, you know, in the music world and just the film composing world.
Yeah, those were really the only original scores I know that he made. So that's why I don't really have that much to say. I can say, even though I've never seen Chariots of Fire, I know the score.
Yeah, nobody's seen the movie, but they know that song. You know, won the Oscar.
Exactly. I know the end scene that it's used during. That's as much of Chariots of Fire that I've seen. Yeah. And are you okay?
No, I'm good. Just scratching.
Okay, and unfortunately, this one came as a true shock. Just before the show started, Ray Liotta has passed away. That was a big shock because he was one of those guys who you always saw working, and he seemed, you know, in good health. So, you know, this just came as a shock. You know, he died in his sleep in the Dominican Republic. And I think the last thing I had seen him in was actually that the Many Saints of Newark, and where he plays dual roles in that film, and it showed he still got it, you know, because hey, if you ever need somebody who seems mob connected or crooked, that he was your guy, you know. And he played in his fair share of comedies. I mean, what was it, Herbie Halloween with Adam Sandler?
I was thinking of Operation Dumbo Drop.
See, that's one of those movies I know about, never watched. You know, I've seen bits and pieces and never was like, I need to see more. You know, but
it was an odd cast.
Yes, very odd. It just looked like they were picking names out of a hat for that cast. Like, well, he's kind of marketable. Yeah, okay, he'll do it. And, you know, but I will always remember him, obviously, for Goodfellas, one of my favorite movies of all time, but also one of his early roles in Something Wild, you know, where he plays Melanie Griffith's ex, you know, who's menacing and a criminal, and just beats the shit out of Jeff Daniels throughout the movie. That was always one of his more memorable roles. I mean, playing the villain in, what was the Tina Fey, A Date Night?
Yeah.
You know, always playing the heavy Beyond the, was it Beyond the Pines? And
The Place Behind the Pines.
Yes, he was good in that. I mean, and did you know he was one of the finalists for Saturday Night Fever? And
I didn't know that.
Yep, him and David Caruso were under consideration before they went with Travolta. So there's a little bit of trivia. So yes, Ray Liotta will be hugely missed. Big, dent in the acting pool.
A huge loss. And Goodfellas was really my introduction, a lot of an introduction for people of his work. And we talked about Unlawful Entry a while ago, and I think about Karina was a weird one, but that was they were, it was out of the box casting there too. No Escape. He did the voice of Tommy Vercetti in the Grand Theft Auto Vice City, which kind of brought him back, when he was in a slump, like Copland and all that stuff. And then, of course, Narc was, I would have thought that was going to get him to the Oscar level of success.
He was robbed there.
Yeah, because he was like Joe Carnahan's guy for a while before he started falling in love with Frank Grillo. So, yeah, it's a huge hole in great actors that we have. And even though like not everything has been great in the last couple of years with the projects he's done, and I never watched that Shades of Blue show that he was on with J-Lo, but he was definitely a dynamite character actor and a huge, like, we're gonna miss this guy. It's a huge loss to this business.
Yes, especially for the roles he probably still had in him. And and that is where we end our news segment of the show. And now we are on to the reviews. So, are y'all ready? Because these are all some heavy hitters this week. And most of them are sequels, except for one, which is a reboot. But let's start with the most recent film, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I guess, okay, this is a sequel to Doctor Strange, where Doctor Strange has now been pulled into a multiverse because he's trying to protect a young girl whose powers that someone, wait, this is a spoiler-heavy review because there's no way to talk about
spoilers.
Okay, basically, Scarlet Witch wants this girl's powers so she can find the dimension and be with her children. And Doctor Strange is trying to protect her and save her. The film at first tries to play coy with who is this mystery, but then soon drops its act, and then it basically ends up becoming the finale of WandaVision, the series. I'll let you talk first about Doctor Strange 2, and then I will say my thoughts.
So when we saw Everything Everywhere All at Once, I made a prediction to you where I said that film is going to be better than Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And I was hoping I might be a little bit wrong because it's Marvel. And I heard all these rumors of cameos and, transporting into like the animation universe of Marvel and all this other stuff that was all over the internet. And I don't feel like it lived up to the title. Now, it's not a bad film. Sam Raimi really, I think, brought the horror element to it that we expected. You see his trademarks. He's got Bruce Campbell doing a cameo. It's pretty violent in many scenes, and even more violent than most Marvel movies. And I love Elizabeth Olsen as Scarlet Witch in this one because the trailers made you think she was going to be an ally up until a point. No, she's the villain throughout this entire movie. And, you understand her intentions where she's not a flat out villain, but her actions are making her flip to that dark side, which is always what the Scarlet Witch character was in the comic book. Now, all that being said, and again, I love Benedict Cumberbatch. I like the cameos that we got, John Krasinski playing Mr. Fantastic, and he's not done. That was just a variant. And Patrick Stewart coming back to Professor X in an accurate wheelchair, just like in the X-Men cartoon. And it was great hearing the theme song when that popped up, Danny Elfman's score being thrown in there. So there's a lot to like. But where was the multiverse of madness? Because they only went to like maybe 2 or 3 different spots in this movie. And you had that bit that you saw in the trailer when he's flipping with America Chavez through the different dimensions. That was as close as we got, where like they turned into paint at one point, they turn into cartoons. You see them, I think, in like 2099. You know, I wanted to see more of that. I wanted to see this go crazier than it did. And instead, it just seemed to fall into this line of, it's a mainstream Disney-produced Marvel movie. And I felt disappointed by that, because Everything Everywhere All at Once, that didn't have a multiverse title in there, but you could see how ridiculously nuts that movie was. And I loved every minute of it because of that. This was half of that. This was like, you only gave me 25% of the multiverse of madness. You didn't go to full 100 here. And that really was the one thing that let me down about it. But I still liked it. I was still enjoying it. But where was the multiverse of madness? And I feel like Kevin Feige was just not behind the wheel on this one.
Okay. I agree with you about where was the multiverse of madness. I think you liked it more than I did. It's a fine movie, you know, I was entertained, but okay, you have to understand, when Doctor Strange, the first film, came out, I wasn't that interested in seeing it because, you know, he was never one of my favorite characters. But when I went to see it, I was shocked at how much I enjoyed the first film. And because it was strange, different, and had interesting uses of the special effects and the 3D, you know, that it had in it. Even if the villain wasn't the most memorable. You know, again, this is his first movie, so he can't be fighting like, oh, my arch enemy, my biggest enemy. But here, the problem is, and it's not Sam Raimi's fault, but the first one was so dark and kind of weird that this one feels so studio produced.
Yeah.
So you notice the difference, you know, and it just feels like it's on autopilot almost. You know, I know it has more horror elements, you know, but even those are really more like, again, like PG-13 horror elements.
Which is what they were trying to go for. They wanted it to feel like you were back in the 80s and it's Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom or Red Dawn, where it falls between the line of PG-13 and R.
But it was never scary. That was the problem. It was like,
no, it wasn't.
They tried for some jump scares, but they never quite worked. You also have to keep in mind, I saw this a little late, so some of the spoilers were, you know, it was ruined for me. But it even undercuts itself in the post-credit sequence.
Yes.
Because you give us this big dramatic ending, then you get us the first post-credit sequence, which, oh, great, there's a cameo by somebody we've never seen before. But then it shows, okay, even though that big thing that happened in the end, he seems okay with it. So you cut that short. Then you have the second one, which is really just an in-joke for Sam Raimi, Bruce Campbell, and people who sit to the end of the credits. It really doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, you know? And the audience I saw it with, I know like my close friend really wanted to see Deadpool show up, and we didn't get that. Now, I didn't want, like, it would be a mistake if the whole film was driven by cameos and it takes away from the story. I can understand that being a distraction, but come on. You just let Scarlet Witch collapse herself when she realizes the mistake that she's making. Why not at least have a hint that she's going to get recruited by the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and you know, she meets her real father from another universe being Magneto? That could have been something that people would have been talking about. But no, that we get the standard, like Charlize Theron playing the in the comics, she ends up becoming the wife of Doctor Strange, Clea, but nobody cares. You know,
exactly.
This was supposed to be something much bigger, and this is coming out exactly 10 years after the Avengers. So you think this was going to be like a major bombshell, and we didn't really get that. You know, Spider-Man, which we'll talk about later, really opened up the multiverse and gave people what they wanted. And I don't think we really got we got maybe, like I said, 25% of what we wanted. We didn't get the full 100.
Well, that's because this feels more like a placeholder movie. Like, again, to give closure to the WandaVision series and set up other things in the future for it. I mean, even the ending with America Chavez at the temple felt like she was in Aquafina's storyline in Shang-Chi.
But, you know, this is another problem with the MCU right now as a whole. Now, I understand most of this is going to probably lead to Secret Wars, which won't happen for another couple of years. If you know the comic book, that's when, you know, you see the X-Men, you see Spider-Man, you see all these guys go into another dimension and they're supposed to fight some major intergalactic battle. But right now, each of these films in Phase 4, plus the Disney Plus shows, they seem so disconnected. You don't know where they're supposed to lead. You know, Phase 1 was all about building to the Avengers. Phase 2 was essentially building the Age of Ultron and the eventual split of the Avengers. And then Phase 3 was going into Infinity War and Endgame. Where is this supposed to go? Because it just seems like we're just setting off into different teams. So the villains are all being recruited by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and looks like Shang-Chi is going to be part of maybe like a new adventure group. But it seems like we don't really know, like there's not one track. It's like one too many tracks and not one clear path of where's this all going to diverge.
I agree with you. Me, I'm just like, it just killed any momentum. I mean, obviously I'm going to see more Marvel movies.
Yeah.
But it just like the rest of the day put me in a bad mood, you know? It was just like, this was just such a letdown compared to part 1, so.
I mean, like Jamie Lee Curtis is out there, you know, going on Twitter, going on Instagram, and really pushing everything everywhere all at once and saying, this is the real Multiverse of Madness. And I'm not going to argue with Jamie Lee Curtis. I'm with her on that.
I would tell everybody, if you really want to see an interdimensional multiverse movie, go see Everything Everywhere All at Once. Okay, so interesting you brought it up. So we should move on and start talking about Spider-Man No Way Home. Yes, I finally saw it, you know, after having internet issues for the longest. But I finally got to see the movie, and I agree with what everybody is saying. I thought it was great. It might have made my top 10 had I seen it, you know, when it came out. You know, it's hard to be critical of it because it felt like its heart was in the right place, even though, you know, the thing, I guess the only part I found annoying is, you know, let's trust, you know, Dr. What's the name? The Green Goblin. You know, those scenes I was rolling my eyes. And I would never have trusted Jamie Foxx's character because it's just like, he never seems innocent or nice in this movie. So it's just like, why would you ever trust him to do the right thing exactly? But I mean, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the dramatic ending, you know, even though in that movie, everybody forgets, you know, supposedly that he's Spider-Man, but in Doctor Strange 2, he still remembers, you know, so.
He just doesn't know he's Peter Parker.
Oh, okay. And then, you know, the love story with Zendaya, and then Tobey Maguire, who almost looks the same, you know, as he did in those movies, and Andrew Garfield seems like he's going for the more emo, comedic relief Spider-Man. You know, I enjoyed the film. I enjoyed seeing the villains come back, you know, even if they were all a little one note. And we got to kind of get to see what, I guess, a Sinister Six movie would look like. You know, I was kind of shocked that even Rhys Ifans returned as the Lizard. You know, I didn't expect that one. So, but like I said, I have nothing bad to say about it. I think hopefully it ends here, you know, no offense, you know, to the movie, but I'd rather it end here and let it be a memory than something that drags on, you know, where Tom Holland is getting older, you know, it's like, oh, I'm still Peter Parker, you know, and not to mention they already have the animated multiverse of Spider-Man, but it still feels like they're still going to drag him into another film, especially by when you keep building up these, Sony keeps building up these well, not sequels, but movies of his villains that eventually he's going to have to be pulled into them. And, you know, so, but like I said, I didn't really have too many faults with Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yeah, I loved every minute of it. I mean, I grew up a Spider-Man fan. I felt like this was a love letter to the franchise as a whole. And the audience that I saw it with when it first came out, they loved every minute. I mean, from the Daredevil cameo to when Andrew Garfield first shows up and Tom Holland, Tobey Maguire, it just was beat for beat a fun movie. And I like the idea of we're not going to kill these villains because they all pretty much die in their own universes, even though they don't really explain what happened to Sandman and the Lizard. That's the only weird part of which maybe there could have been some little more story to. But I like that the whole thing was, it was kind of a Christmas movie, a little bit of a It's a Wonderful Life. Let's try to save the villains because they're all like pretty much diseased in some way and cure them rather than let them go out and die in their universes. So I kind of like that aspect of it. And I found myself really appreciating Andrew Garfield a little bit more because I was not a fan of the Amazing Spider-Man movies. And it's not his fault. It's just the script. It's the fact that they tried to reboot from scratch. But here you really felt his heart. And when he saved MJ from falling off the Statue of Liberty, you get a little bit of Misty when you think about that. Just the emotion he feels that this could have been Gwen Stacy that he could have saved. So like you, I don't have too many bad things to say. I think the only real pet peeve that I have is I think there should have been at least one new villain introduced. It was fine bringing back Alfred Molina, bringing back William Dafoe. I was cool with all that, but it's really the Sinister Five, and I guess they want to twist it saying, oh, well, Spider-Man's going to help them, so now it's really Sinister Six. But they needed at least one new villain to be introduced. And I don't care who it was, if it was Kraven or the Rhino or whoever, but not just have it be all the classic bad guys from the other movies. Just give us at least one before we move on to something else. Other than that, I thought top to bottom, this is the best Phase 4 movie that they've done so far in the MCU.
And I feel like with another villain, it would have just been overstuffed because you're trying to like have so many dramatic scenes, like for Froggy, for Aunt May, for Zendaya, for Ned. It's just like, we're running out of people here to like, and then you're like, and another villain too. And it's like, well, we might as well make this a 4-hour epic then, with a part 1 and a part 2, like Mission Impossible. But like I said, I have yet to meet anyone who's like, yeah, didn't like it, or so obviously, definitely a recommend.
Yeah.
The next one, since we're staying on a more cheerful track, the movie I know Andre has been waiting for quite a bit, and that is Chippendale's Rescue Rangers, the movie. Finally made its premiere last week. And, it's been all the talk. And Andre, since this was something you heavily anticipated, I'll let you talk about it first. And
so, like you, I was a kid growing up with the Disney Afternoon, and I remember my mom taking me to see the DuckTales movie, and I enjoyed it. I know it's not great now, but at the time I really liked it, and I was hoping Chippendale Rescue Rangers was going to be the next one, but we never got it. The next Disney Afternoon movie that got me was Goofy movie, which also has its fans too, and I did see that in the theaters as well. So this was almost like a long time coming to get a Rescue Rangers movie, and of course they went meta, they went live action, but this was fun. This was a nice throwback to what I remember as a kid, while also trying to do, a little bit of a twist up and say, well, the Chipmunks, not the Chipmunks, there's a joke there. Chippendale, they were high school buddies who got together and got picked up as TV stars and became the stars of Rescue Rangers, and it became this big thing. And then Dale decided he wanted to go off and get his own spin-off, and Chip got upset, and then the show got canceled, and then they kind of went off. So Dale's like signing autographs at conventions, and Chip is like selling insurance. And then Monterey Jack, he's in trouble with somebody, and then he disappears. So now the whole movie is them trying to find Monterey Jack. and the villain turns out to be like this deranged version of Disney's Peter Pan, all grown up and paunchy with like a receding hairline, and Will Arnett playing the voice of that. And he's trying to like take all the cartoons and bootleg them and send them off to China, which is kind of clever in its own way. So I mean, like, and then they play up the idea that this is going to be, a love letter to all of animation. So, Chip is in the classic 2D style hand drawing art that you remember from the cartoons, but then Chip supposedly went and got like a CG enhancement done. So that's why he's all CG and Chip is not. And then you get a wide variety of, classic Disney characters, like Roger Rabbit makes a cameo. Scrooge McDuck has a cameo in it. But what shocks me is how many non-licensed Disney characters they were able to get. They got the Transformers, they got He-Man and Skeletor, they got She-Ra. I mean, they got like everybody from the 80s, all the way from the 90s, and there's references to Nickelodeon. And, I was like, holy shit, how did they even get away with this stuff? It's like, these guys probably should do a Roger Rabbit sequel, not Robert Zemeckis, because they're getting away with more than they did back in those days with the Looney Tunes and the Disney characters coming together. And I love the nod to the video game as well as to episodes of the cartoon that they kind of injected into the plot. So, yeah, I mean, there were a couple dry spots near the end, and I was shocked Eric Bana played the voice of Monterey Jack. I thought it was the original voice actor. I was like, that's Eric Bana? Like, holy shit. And maybe the whole thing with Gadget and Zipper was kind of weird. That was the only thing I was like, what? I don't remember that shit when I was growing up. I don't remember any romantic connection there. That clearly was the writers just having their fun. I would have picked a radically different character. And I think it was a disappointment they used the CG Baloo instead of the Baloo from Tailspin. That's another pet peeve that I have. But overall, it was fun. It was a nice throwback. And it made me miss those Disney ice pops as a kid. I would have had one of those watching a movie if they had those today. So I highly recommend Chippendale Rescue Rangers.
I think I liked it actually more than you.
Yeah.
It felt like as soon as I finished it, I would say it felt like Roger Rabbit light. There's no obviously there's no human character for them to. Well,
it's not raunchy.
It's not raunchy, and there's a mystery, but it's not really that hard to figure out. And the standout of the whole movie that had me laughing for 10 minutes straight, Ugly Sonic.
Yes. Another unexpected cameo.
Yes, that just had me dying throughout the movie. I love the movie, even though it's called, Chippendale Rescue Rangers. This is a Lonely Island movie because you have Akiva Schaffer directs it. What's his name? Not what's his name. Andy Samberg does the voice of Dale, and John Mulaney, who's not part of Lonely Island, but he plays Chip. And it's just like, oh, come on, guys, this is all your sensibilities, And
I like how they explained the change in the voice. That was cool.
But I mean, it was like there was nothing really wrong with the movie. Like you said, some of the jokes do fall a little flat, but for the most part, they stay enjoyable throughout. And there's always a quip or a punchline. I mean, come on, you have DJ Scat Cat
with Paul Abdul. Holy shit!
Exactly, just to show the time period that they were big in. I mean, like you said, the Dennis Haysbert voice for Zipper and their whole little romance, that was the only part of the film where it's like, okay, it kind of takes you out a little bit, like, ew, like, it was just like weird. Though I was wondering how they were going to incorporate Gadget, because, one of the things I remember most about, the cartoon, I totally forgot about Zipper, That's why as soon as I saw Roger Rabbit in it, I'm like, oh, it knows where it's going. Because I'm like, oh, this is almost like that film. So it's in competition with Spider-Man No Way Home as like one of the highest recommendations of this episode because, like I said, I just really enjoyed it through and through. And I'm not gonna lie, I enjoyed the trailer. I thought it would be a fun movie, but I didn't expect it to be this good.
Yeah, I didn't expect it to be that good.
So
once also fun. This is just me spitballing. If they had like the animated New Kids on the Block or the animated Hammerman show up,
no, now you're
go all out.
You're like, oh, now you want all your Saturday morning cartoons. I mean, they gave you Darkwing Duck. What else do you want?
Well, he needs a movie too. He's long.
True, as he said in the movie. Yeah. It's like, hey, I'm just glad there were like that many bonkers references, you know.
There's
like,
only one, and thankfully that was it.
And that's all it needs to be. Yeah. You know, it's like, oh no. I kind of wish they would have brought back, even though I know the person who voiced him is dead, the cat villain. You know.
Well, he was there for a few minutes. Remember when they were like overly laughing at the beginning? Like that was the only time we saw him.
Yeah, because I was hoping like he'd play more of a bigger role. Yeah. Like, you know, find out like, oh, off the set, he's this totally different character or something like that. Since, you know, we're revoicing people anyway. Yeah. You know, I'm sure Dom DeLuise's children one of them could try to do his voice. But like I said, overall, I really love this film. You know. So obviously it's both a recommendation for both of us. And we come to our final review, which is A Quiet Place Part 2, which continues the adventures of the family from A Quiet Place Part 1 as they leave their cabin and more try to seek out in the world to find shelter and safety. You know, Emily Blunt reprised her role. And John Krasinski, who also directed it, has a cameo in the opening scene where we actually get to see when, I guess, the initial infestation or attack happened, which also introduces us to some characters that we will see later in the film. I will say, look, A Quiet Place, I liked what it achieved in the first place when it came out. I wasn't like in love with the film, but I liked the film. And this one surpasses it because there's a reason why it's called A Quiet Place Part 2 and not A Quiet Place 2, because this generally continues the story. It builds more of the world outside of the shelter that they were in, even though for the most part, it's another shelter. But, you know, we get to see other characters and how they've survived and how some aren't, you know, good-hearted and how evil this has changed them and made them. You know, with a Scoot McNairy, who I didn't even recognize, you know, as one of the main villains. But the opening scene is just beautifully paced, you know, when they first attack. You know, how do you say his name? Cillian Murphy?
Cillian Murphy.
Yes. He's a good addition to the cast as, I guess, the male lead role. And this kind of felt like a Scooby-Doo adventure to a certain extent because then everybody is separated and seems to go off on their own adventure and their own encounters throughout. I like that this movie has more minority characters. One nitpick is Demon Hansen, who, again, as he always does in these movies, plays these stoic characters, only here he doesn't stick around that long. And what's worse, his character doesn't even get a name. You know, he's just like, oh, blah, blah, blah. What about my children? You know, after he gives this wonderful speech about community. You know, so that was like my one nitpick. I'm just like, oh, so we're sticking to that cliche, huh? You know, and I like that while the mother and son are trying to, you know, battle this monster, you know, more the, you know, the daughter and I guess their neighbor, you know, he's more, you know, trying to deal with the humans at first until, you know, the alien show, you know, their smarts. I mean, I really enjoyed it more than I thought I would, you know, so I think definitely this is the strongest film for John Krasinski as a director, or that he's shown as a director. What did you think of A Quiet Place Part 2?
Pretty much the same as you. I enjoyed it more than the first one. I thought the beginning, showing how everything starts, all the madness, like when he's like trying to get out of the supermarket, trying to run to his family at the ball game. I thought that was a really good way to kind of like show what happened before the first film. And I do like that they expanded it out, so it wasn't just all about these aliens chasing after Emily Blunt and her family, but then seeing like the survivors are just as nuts. It's sort of like it's turned into Walking Dead in a way, where you have like these human characters that are much worse than the aliens, because they're trying to survive and they're willing to kill anybody to do so. And yeah, Cillian Murphy, I think, because I missed John Krasinski to a certain extent, but he was a good fill-in for that part as like a strong male hero in the film. So yeah, overall, I thought it was in some ways an improvement, and yeah, I would recommend this one.
Yeah, Cillian Murphy gives a different energy here because, he's lost his family. So, he's still kind of like, you don't know what he's going to do one scene to the next, where you always knew John Krasinski would do anything to save his family. So he was more stoic, so I liked that aspect of it. And I like that this film had more jump scares, and with like the sacrifice of Demon Hunsu, it showed no one is safe. No big name character that you think will survive is safe. And this is one of those films where I think maybe the sequels can be better than the original, as they drift a little bit away from what the first film was. Sort of like the Purge movies, the Friday the 13th movies, where the sequels are a little bit more memorable than where it all started, So like I said, I feel like any sequel is just going to open up the world and see the safety and devastation. Like this is what was it? I Am Legend should have been, like this is the kind of like uncertainty the movie should have, plus better special effects. But I definitely highly recommend A Quiet Place too. And do you have any last words on A Quiet Place too?
No.
Okay, then we find ourselves at the end of this show, so that settles our business for this week. But as you know, we always have unfinished business. And I have to ask you, good people, have you seen Pleasantville? If not, why not? Because it's fucking awesome.
Have you seen Everything Everywhere All at Once? If not, why not? Because it's fucking awesome.
True. And with that, we bid you adieu till next time.